What's up, Motorheads? Welcome to F1 Technology and Perspective. I'm Scott Vick, one of your intrepid hosts. With me, as always, is my cohort, Corey Brune, and my partner in crime, where we're going to talk about the latest rounds of F1. We're going to be putting it in some historical perspective and talk about the latest racing technology. We've been away for the past couple weeks, so we haven't been able to take and do recaps of the last two full races in Azerbaijan and Miami, and we weren't able to take and talk about the cancellation of the Imola Grand Prix. But we're going to get into that today, and we're going to take and do a little bit of a preview of the Monaco Grand Prix coming up this weekend. We are recording on Thursday, May 25th, and the cars are scheduled to hit the track in Monaco tomorrow for FP1. The teams have already arrived, and we've already seen some news coming out of Monaco. So, Corey, how you doing today?
I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Yes.
It feels like it's been so long since our last race,
Yes,
in
it does.
what,
It just
three
we had
weeks, 2 weeks, yeah.
yeah, well, it's been 2 weeks since the last race, and and before that we had a long break in there where it seemed
That's
like
right.
between Azerbaijan and Albert Park, and so it's good to finally see that we're finally going to get to go back to
Yeah,
racing. So
right, right.
super excited about that. So
Awesome.
first up, let's do a recap of Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
So. Uh, on the rundown, I have the first thing to talk about is the excellent job that Perez did in taking the win. But I'm going to change that up a little bit, and I really want to. The first thing I want to talk about is the weekend format change because that caused a lot of controversy over the race weekend.
Right. Yeah, especially with Verstappen and Russell getting
Yeah,
into sort of a tiff. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But I'm I have not been a big fan of the sprint races. I understand the reasoning behind them originally was to take and try to kind of spice up the the racing itself, give the fans a little more, track time because sometimes the qualifying and free practices can be pretty boring. They're definitely better than they used to be. When Formula One went to their current format of, three sessions inside of qualifying where they start cutting down, whereas in the past, before they went to that format back when oftentimes you'd have a 90-minute qualifying session and you would have absolutely nothing happen until like the last 10 or 15 minutes when all the cars would hit the track, do their fastest laps, and then call it
Yeah.
a day. At least we get a little more entertainment value out of qualifying now than what we had in
Right.
the past before we went to the current qualifying format.
Yeah.
So but the format for the sprint race this time got changed up where we actually had in the past the sprint races were done and the finishing order of the sprint race determined the starting grid for the next day's Grand Prix, whereas this time around we've got a qualifying for the sprint race, and then a qualifying for the Grand Prix, and then the Grand Prix itself. And so what's your thoughts on the way that they changed everything up, Corey? Do you like it? You're not? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I don't know. I Since I don't have that historical perspective, man, I really do enjoy it. It's almost like a mini race for me, so I really enjoy the sprints. I like watching them. I like, all the drama that ensues in such a small format, right? Everybody has to get their times in and has to do it in such a short time frame, right? So they have what, like 20 laps or something like that they have to go through. So they have to be on their best behavior and they have to be at their very best, or otherwise they're starting to back the grid. So yeah, for me, I love it.
Well, I will agree with you that I like the sprint race format itself, but I like it when it's used as the qualifying
Yeah.
for the Grand Prix. I did not like the way they did it in Azerbaijan, where you had one less free practice and instead
Yeah.
had an additional qualifying session for the sprint race. And then, regardless of the outcome of the sprint race, it had absolutely no bearing on the Grand Prix itself
Oh,
on Sunday.
yeah.
I'm not a fan of that. And and there's a number of drivers Max Verstappen being the most vocal about it, about saying that they didn't like the sprint format at all. And we
Right.
kind of saw the reason why he doesn't like that
Yeah.
so much. It was well on display this weekend.
Oh, very much so.
So yeah, we saw Leclerc take an excellent pole for the sprint race, but
Hmm.
almost immediately overtaken by Perez. For the first place, and then we saw the tussle between Russell, no pun, no
Yeah,
poetry intended
right.
there, and Verstappen. Tore a hole through Verstappen's side pod, which could have made him or the team very happy because you know even though it's not nearly as bad as it used to be, carbon fiber is still expensive, and having to
Yeah,
rebuild an entire side pod like that is it's not a cheap endeavor. And so,
yeah.
it's definitely not something that I think any of the teams really want to see. And like going back to what you were saying is, the drivers definitely have to be on their best behavior,
Hmm.
because you put a car, in the wall or in the tire barrier on during the sprint race, and it's a very long night for your mechanics.
Yeah, definitely. They're taking overtime for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So we
moving
got
on to, yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
All you.
No, I was just going to say,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you were moving on to the Grand Prix. So, okay, so here we go. All right, so moving on to the Grand Prix, we had another excellent, or not surprising, I should say, Ferrari. Or all right, moving on to the Grand Prix, we had a pretty unsurprising another Red Bull 1 and 2. This time, Checo came out on top over Verstappen. But they by far and away Red Bull looked the class of the field. Um, Thoughts on that?
Yeah, they just seem unbeatable at this point. I mean, they're taking 1 and 2. Most of the time, they're also taking fastest lap on top of that. So there's not, nobody has a good answer yet, at least, on how to really beat Red Bull. They're that far ahead of everybody else from a technology standpoint, from a racing standpoint. And really, you have two of the best drivers on the grid right now in those cars. So your ability to beat them is really difficult, right? Because all the technology that they have behind it, as well as the drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's when Russell at the beginning of the season after the first race said Red Bull's going to win every race. I still don't believe that they're going to win every race, because
Right.
there's going to be a time where mechanical gremlin's going to pop up, especially as we get further into the season and you start getting, because the engine allotment is so small and we've got so many races, you're going to start having issues with
Yeah.
maybe a worn out part is going to go, or it's going to go in qualifying or during practice, and it's going to relegate one of them, relegate them to the back of the grid,
Right.
things like that, where they're going to be so far back that even as amazing drivers as they are,
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to make up that much ground. So
Right.
I still don't believe that they'll win every single race, just from a sheer statistical
Yeah.
perspective.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they do, they, as of right now, they are still very much the class of the field. And what Adrian Newey has done with the front suspension on the cars, he has done
Yeah.
some magic
Right.
with it, the way that it's just nobody's going to catch him right away.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's going to take them some time. Right.
Yes. But as far as taking some time, or not needing as much time, during Azerbaijan, though, Ferrari looked much stronger than they have previously. We had,
Yeah.
Leclerc taking the pole during the sprint qualifying. They looked really strong in both the sprint race and in an excellent second place for Leclerc in the sprint race. Very, very, very good. Uh, showing during the Grand Prix. Leclerc took the last spot on the podium,
Yeah.
which ended up in being Alonso's first missed podium of the season
Right.
so far. But
Yeah.
but yeah, Ferrari looked much much stronger.
Much more comfortable on that track as well. Yeah, completely agree.
Yep. So, and then, as we already mentioned, Alonso, missed his podium for the first time this season. But uh, Alpha or but Alonso looked really strong. The car looked really strong. Aston Martin has looked like absolutely the best of the rest, the kings of the
Yeah.
second runners, if you will. It's a terrible way to say it, but it's definitely the improvements that Aston Martin have made to the car from last year to this year is just undeniable. How good the car is, and how good, because Alonso, because we expected Alonso to be fast, but
Right.
we expected him to kind of overdrive the car. But we've even seen amazing drives out of Eric Stoll, out of
Yeah.
Stroll, simply because the car is just so good this year.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
have more news that
Dramatic. Go ahead. Say dramatic performance increases. Throughout the year. Oh, hold on. I'm just gonna edit that all out. You go ahead.
yeah, that's cool. Okay, so but we have some more news about Aston Martin that we'll touch on during the Monaco preview for next weekend. So let's go ahead and move on to Miami. First
Yeah.
Grand Prix in the United States for this year.
I love the
So
track. Yeah, the track is great. I like Austin better just because we are here in Texas. But Miami has a different flavor, right? It's fast track. I enjoy watching the races there. Just Red Bull again, just dominating, right? Coming within what was I think the third place was at 10 seconds behind or something like that. It's just incredible.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just incredible how much faster that car is with those drivers in it. Just
Yes, absolutely. They again. I know I keep blowing up Adrian Newey's skirt about the amazing things that he's done with that car, but it's just
right.
absolutely undeniable, that the Adrian Newey design cars for so many years have dominated Formula One when he's been with various teams, and it's just so unprecedented how he has
Yeah,
managed to stay on top as the preeminent car designer and aerodynamicist in Formula One for such a long period of time.
right. It's amazing, and he just got signed, didn't he? He just got signed for another few years.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He
It's a
just
very
took
good thing for
nice,
Red Bull.
yes, very nice fat contract extension for Mr. Newey.
Nice. Good for him,
But
man. Good for
yeah,
him.
but like you were saying, Red Bull had an amazing, 1-2 again. This time Verstappen over Perez. But
Mhm.
honestly, it was an inspired drive by Verstappen because Verstappen found some of those gremlins that we were just talking about during
Yeah,
qualifying. He ends up starting in ninth place because he didn't
right.
set a time in Q3 or yeah in he didn't
Q3,
start.
right?
He didn't set a time in Q3. So they went by his time, the last time that he set in Q2, which was still, far enough back, which relegated him back to ninth place. Storms through the field. But on top of that, in addition to Red Bull having such a dominant set of cars, Red Bull also nailed the strategy for the weekend.
Yeah,
So with
completely.
because because the hard tires were obviously the tire to go with, and most of the front of the grid started on medium tires. Well, with Red Bull, they decided with Verstappen to take a gamble,
Yeah,
put him on the
go
hard
hard.
tires to start
Yeah,
the race. He runs almost the entire length of the race, makes his stop very, very late in the race, and with 10 laps to go, is able to take past Perez because Checo had gone with the opposite strategy of starting on the
Yeah.
mediums and then going to the hards. And by the time Verstappen made his stop to go on to the mediums, that delta of where the performance of the mediums or fell off
Yeah.
and the hard tires, or I'm sorry, where let me so we hit that delta of where the soft tires, or not soft tires, pardon me, where the medium tires performance was better than the hard tire drop off. And so with 10 laps, like I said before, with 10 laps to go, Verstappen makes a brilliant move on Perez and is able to finish out the race with just an absolutely storming drive and takes fastest lap to boot to take
Right. Yeah.
that, that extra lead over Checo for the drivers' championship. But now there's been some rumblings, though, that after Miami, some people were asking, is Checo legitimately a threat for, or is Checo legitimately a threat to Verstappen this year?
Right. Man, I think he is. I think he's definitely a real deal. He's been in the sport for what, 10 years, 11 years now. There's no doubt he's a real threat. The only thing is, will Red Bull give him a good enough strategy to move forward, right? So, we all know he's fantastic on street races. No doubt about it. But can he really, and really I think that he has that ability to also overcome him on pretty much anything else, right? On street or track. I think that he definitely has the skill set there. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you there. I think Checo, given equal equipment and given a significant strategy, seems this year to finally have found his place in the team, and he seems to be every bit the match for Verstappen in most situations. And but the one thing that Checo can do that in some of the later races will play a huge role is that Checo is significantly easier on tires and is able to make tires last
Yes.
longer than just about any other driver on the grid, which later on, as we start getting into more of the true road course races, could play a factor.
Right. Yeah. Very true. I didn't think about that.
Yep. So, and then, the last thing we'll touch on for Miami, it's Miami's, like you were saying, it's a cool atmosphere and everything. It's very, they've tried to make it somewhat like Monaco in the displays of wealth, but it's really much more of a, hey, look at me type of
Yeah. Right.
displays of wealth, as opposed to Monaco where it's just everywhere and you just expect it.
It's real, real money too. It's not something that somebody made just like last week. This is like true old money, right? It's
Yeah, at Monaco,
generational
yes,
wealth.
absolutely.
Yeah, right, right, exactly.
Sometimes centuries worth of wealth.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yep, absolutely. So,
Have yachts.
okay, yeah, so let's go ahead. Let's move on to a quick Imola recap. So we had the Imola race was canceled, as we know, because there was unprecedented flooding in Italy, in northern Italy, near the racetrack. There's a river that actually runs behind the one of the back straightaways at Imola that was during the race weekend was very, very close to uh, uh, breaking its banks, and it could have possibly have caused some flooding on the track itself. I think that F1 did the right thing in this particular
Yeah,
case in going ahead and canceling the race. Um, we'll get into it in a minute, about other races that have been canceled in the past. Um, but this one was kind of unprecedented because most of the times that races have been canceled, it's not been for weather. It's always been for other reasons. But because of the uh, the unprecedented flooding. I mean, and with AlphaTauri's uh, factory is very, very close to Imola, and there was a number of the team members who lost their homes during the flooding, that they were actually literally sleeping at the factory.
That's crazy.
So yeah, so there was a number of people who, were kind of upset that they canceled the race, but at the same time, again, I think that it was really the right call,
Yeah.
because of, if they had gone on with the race, the strain that it would have put on, like,
Yeah,
the first responders and a
exactly.
lot of the people who work the race weekend at the track, who would have, who
Hmm.
were, busy dealing with their own problems with, flooding in their homes and things like that, that, it would have put a strain on almost all of the infrastructure of the track. And if the strain that it would have put on the medical, if something were to have happened during the race that required, significant trauma
Yeah.
response.
I think you really nailed it. It's not just the first responders, but it's also the people that worked or would work the track itself. It's also all the fans. They I'm sure they were displaced as well. So you have all the stress on top of a race. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So one of the rare times that I'll say it, but the FIA was right in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was really significant, the fact that Ferrari, F1, and a number of the other teams have all pledged money to, after the cancellation of the race, were more than happy to pledge money to the recovery relief uh, efforts in the northern Italy region, in and around the racetrack, to uh, try to help those who were displaced. So they were trying to help a lot of, like, the track workers and the people who would have worked, first response and things at the track. So they pledged to donate this money, which, for an they all, I know F1 and Ferrari both pledged $1 million. Now, $1
Wow.
million for these folks, that's a drop in the bucket. I think they probably
Sure.
maybe could have done a little more, but their heart's in the right place for a change.
Right.
And I think it was very significant,
Yeah.
the fact that they stepped up.
Right. Yeah. And again, $1 million is quite a bit of money, right? So it's not like they gave them $100,000 or something. Even $100,000, that's it's quite a bit of money. So $2 million all in all, I think it's pretty good, right? Again, yeah, they make way more than that, but $1 million is really not too shabby, right?
No, not bad at all. So, and then also, the one thing that we got that I kind of could be the silver lining, is probably one of the best pictures that came out of the whole flooding situation. Was a picture that was published of Yuki Tsunoda, who by all accounts, is a very tiny little guy. And it's a picture of him helping with the cleanup efforts near Imola, and he is standing between two guys who are working on, to help with the cleanup, and they are just towering over him. And it just
Wow.
goes to display just how tiny he is, but how big of a heart did that guy have, that he's out there. He could have, jumped on his plane and, gone back to England, gone back to his home in Japan. And no, he was there helping out, pitching in. So good on Yuki, and great picture.
Yeah. One to remember for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
So
So we touched on, the fact that, this was really unprecedented for Imola, to be canceled due to weather. because there's only actually, no, I take that back. There has never been a race that was canceled due to weather.
Hmm.
Formula One has raced in some absolutely diabolical conditions, and they soldiered on. You have 76 in Japan, where I mean it was just a torrential downpour, and this is the one that the race that was made famous by the excellent movie Rush that
Oh yeah, yeah.
that was about the Lauda James
Hmm.
Nicky Lauda James Hunt rivalry, and Nicky went out, did the first 2 or 3 laps. I don't even think he did 3 full laps. I think he did one race, the parade lap, 1 lap, and then he brought it in and said, "That's it. It's too dangerous.
Hmm.
I'm out." And this was just a weekend that was just absolutely diabolical, but they raced anyway. Um, Same thing was, during the early 80s. I want to say it was 83, 84, again in Japan, because there for a long time,
Yeah.
they always raced in Japan in the rainy season. So Japan has had some absolutely diabolical weather situations where they raced anyway.
Hmm.
Last year we had the debacle at Belgium where they actually started the race, did a handful of laps behind the pace car, and then said, "Yeah, we're calling the race and we're giving everybody half points." That a lot of
Right.
people say, "Well, why did we even bother doing that?" And everything. So, and again,
Fair.
it's one of those things that it's Formula One and the FIA do not like to cancel races.
Right.
Notwithstanding the races that were canceled the last couple of years because of COVID, there's only been 5 other times that a race, a Grand Prix, has been canceled.
Hmm.
There was the famous one in 1969 when the drivers boycotted the race at Belgium because Jackie Stewart, who had taken over, who was leading the charge for driver safety, was the leader of the Formula One Drivers Association. They were demanding safety improvements be made to Spa Francorchamps. The changes didn't happen, and mostly because they said it was because of financial considerations and stuff, and the drivers just all said, "Nope, we're not racing," and they ended up
Wow.
canceling it. Yep.
Huh.
Which there's been some other times where the drivers have demanded changes and everything that it's in some cases the FIA has responded, and then there's been a couple of them that the FIA's response was an absolute joke. Indianapolis
Yeah.
97, 98, somewhere in there. I forget what year it was
Hmm.
that we had the Michelin versus Bridgestone debacle where all of the Bridgestone cars after the first parade lap all came into the pits and refused to start the race. So the only
Wow.
teams that you had uh, only of the 20 cars that were supposed to start the race, I think it was only either 8 or 10 teams actually, or 8 or 10 cars actually started the race because they were running on the Michelins, because they were having because this was back during the era where they had the grooved tires in Formula One, and because of the speeds and the load that was being put on the tires coming through the last turn onto the front straightaway at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it was putting so much load on it that they wanted them to put a tire chicane on the back stretch of on that stretch of the track in order to slow the cars down. And the FIA said, no, we don't need to do that. And so a number of the teams that were running Bridgestones I'm saying Bridgestone, but I'm starting to, if I remember correctly, I wished I had it in front of me. It may have been the Michelin teams, but it was one of the others. So
Yeah.
it was like basically you had Ferrari, Jordan, um, and I think it was one other team. So now I'm starting to think it was actually there was only 6 cars that actually started the race, and it was
Wow.
just a complete debacle. Fans were so angry, they were throwing
For
shit on the
sure.
track. It was a complete and utter joke, and that's really kind of what sounded the kind of killed the Grand Prix, the U.S. Grand Prix for a number of years, was that absolute debacle. Um, but some of the other cases was like the only other times that we've had cancellations of races was like 2011, that when the Arab Spring broke out, the Bahrain Grand Prix got canceled because of anti-government protests that basically
Wow.
overtook the track and everything. So for everybody's safety, they canceled that particular race. You had 1985 in Belgium, um, because the track had been resurfaced like 2 weeks before the race, trying to create more grip for in rainy conditions. But because of that, the tarmac was still seeping oils and stuff out of there, which actually did the
Wow.
counter of what they
Yeah.
had tried to resurface it. They didn't. So basically, the surface didn't have enough time to cure properly, and so it made it so dangerous that literally parts of the asphalt were breaking up. And so they ended up having to cancel the race that weekend because of that. So these are the only times that the races have ever been, is when just it's been something that the safety of the drivers it was so far above and beyond even just the normal danger of racing that the FIA has had to say, yeah, no, no bueno.
Wow. That's amazing. Do
Yeah.
you think about all the different conditions, right? That the races go through, and they're just like,
Hmm.
yeah, go ahead, have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Like I said, we've seen just some absolute, especially like wet weather. We've seen some races, famously there was, I believe it was 2001, 2002, somewhere in there, where Michael Schumacher hit the back of David Coulthard in the rain at Spa.
Wow.
I mean, and Schumacher and this was the one that was really funny though, is because Schumacher could not see Coulthard because of the spray. Coulthard's
Yeah.
car broke, and so he was slowing down. And Schumacher came out of the rain, out of the mist, and hit the back end of Coulthard's car, and then tried to blame Coulthard for the accident. Charged down the pits, was ready to start throwing punches.
Really?
And
Wow.
there are some people who say that even after watching the replay, Schumacher still, up until the day that he hit that tree, he still believed that Coulthard was in the wrong
Yeah.
for that accident. But I digress.
That's hilarious, man. You want to do the Monaco preview?
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this upcoming weekend. So, like I said, we're recording this on Thursday, May the 25th. So, the cars are scheduled to hit the track tomorrow for FP1 and 2. The teams are already in Monaco and have already set up shop. So, we've already got a little bit of news coming out of Monaco. I know in the rundown we're going to talk about Red Bull, but actually I'm gonna leave that for last, and we're going to jump ahead to first and foremost. The biggest news this weekend has so far been the rumor that Ferrari has offered a contract to Hamilton for next year, because as we all know, Hamilton's contract is up at the end
Yeah.
of the year. He's still in negotiations with Mercedes, and there's rumors and rumblings even coming from as high as Vassar, the team
Wow.
principal for
Yeah.
Ferrari, saying that Hamilton's been offered a contract for next year in case Mercedes doesn't step up. What's your thoughts?
Wow. I It's interesting, right? I don't think he should move, man. I can understand that he may be feeling the heat, especially since Russell's been doing so much better than him on the same car, same setup, and everything like that. I don't know, man. It's risky because not only you're changing going from Mercedes to Ferrari, but Ferrari just they don't have a. And I don't mean to disrespect Ferrari by any stretch, but to me, it seems like the strategies at Mercedes are far superior than what you're going to get at Ferrari. So that alone would at least say, let's give Mercedes a little bit more time, right? But obviously, it's always good to have that thing in your back pocket to say, I have this offer right here. What are
Yeah.
you guys going to do? How are you going to match it, right? And
Yes.
he may not be really willing to go. It just might be that card, right? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with you. I really think that that's exactly what it, if anything, that's really what it is. It's just something for him to say during negotiations to say, hey, Ferrari wants me. They've offered me, they're ready to back the cash truck up.
Yeah,
But I don't think Hamilton is going to want to go to Ferrari. I think it would be a situation very reminiscent of when Alonso signed with Ferrari. He signed with Ferrari, and thought, okay, this is my chance, because Ferrari, had been really strong for the last few seasons. He goes to Ferrari and the team takes a nosedive through no fault of Alonso's, but just for a number of, political factors and things like that. Team takes a complete nosedive and they never are able to really give him the car that he
yeah,
really for him to really be able to compete. And I think that that's the same that Hamilton, having been teammates with Alonso in the past,
yeah,
I think that that's always going to play in the back of Hamilton's mind of if I go to Ferrari, what's going to
yeah,
happen? Are they going to be able to give me the car?
yeah,
Am I how and the other thing too is Hamilton. I'm not taking anything away from Hamilton as a driver. He is a ferocious competitor.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But off the track, and especially in the last few years, off the track, he seems to be way more laid back. And I don't know that he really is going to want to have to take and put up with all the political BS
Oh yeah,
that
no doubt.
comes with being a driver for Ferrari.
Right. Yeah, it's yeah. If you have no other spots, yeah, sure. But I don't know, man. I'd hold out for as long as possible.
Absolutely. And the thing is though is that if Hamilton were to decide to make that move and go to Ferrari,
Yeah,
who's out? Would it be Leclerc?
yeah.
Would he
Science
take
has been having problems too, though.
Hamilton's spot?
Yeah,
Yeah. Would Sites, be, the odd man out, because it's going to make for I think,
yeah,
especially as we get towards the end of the year, when we get into like the summer break and everything, it
hmm.
could make the silly season this year very, very
Oh,
interesting.
very true. Yeah, because you know for sure those drivers will have a seat. Else will get bumped. They will have a seat somewhere. They're just too good, right? And then think about Ricardo for silly season. You know what's going to
Yeah,
happen there?
absolutely. You
Maybe.
know, Ooh, and see, and that's something I hadn't considered until just now is the way that the cards could start shuffling around. If Hamilton goes to Ferrari, who
Yeah.
does Mercedes take? Do they take whoever, Ferrari drops in favor of Hamilton?
True.
Do they sign Ricardo?
Yeah.
Because,
He has the seniority. Yeah.
Toto Wolff really likes
Yeah.
Ricardo,
Right.
and last year when it was announced that Ricardo was being dropped a year earlier during one of the press conferences, Hamilton very plainly
Oh
said,
yeah.
if it were up to me, you would have a seat next year. So it's like as the parting gift, because Hamilton has done so much for the team. If Hamilton says, hey, I'm going to Ferrari, but you guys need to hire Danny Rick, does Danny Rick get the nod?
Right.
And which would be, can you imagine what kind of pairing that would be
Oh my
with Danny
gosh.
Rick and
It'd be
Russell at
insane.
Mercedes? Oh my God.
Insane.
And
Yeah.
if they can take and get a handle, because we know Mercedes is not going to be down for long. It's like they were
Right.
down last year. They started off a little slow this year. They're not going to stay down forever. They're not going to continue to slide. And if they get a handle on the car and come out of the gate really strong next year with that driver pairing, holy cow!
Yeah, right. It'd be a nice one. Yeah,
Yep,
they would be the team to beat.
yep. And speaking of that, speaking of car changes and getting a handle on things, both McLaren and Mercedes are supposed to have very, very significant upgrades to the cars this weekend at Monaco. McLaren's changes were supposed to be ready last week for Imola, but because of the cancellation, of course, they didn't get to do any running with those new parts and everything the updates that they brought. So this will be the first time we get to see McLaren's updates this weekend, and then also Mercedes have a huge upgrade to their car that's supposed to break cover this weekend. So we're gonna it'll be interesting to see how both those teams fare this weekend at a
Yeah,
much tighter circuit like
right.
Monaco.
Yeah, because there's no overtakes, very few.
Yep, most of the overtakes are done either through attrition or in the pits.
Exactly, exactly.
Yep. So, and this being a home race for Leclerc this weekend, a true home race. Yes, we know a lot of the drivers live in Monaco mostly for tax purposes, but that's neither here nor there. But Leclerc is a true native of Monaco. And so this is a home race for him, a true home race for him. So, and the last 2 years have not been kind to him. Year before last, he doesn't even get a chance to start the race because he damages the gearbox on the last lap of qualifying, puts the car in pole, and then never makes it off the grid uh,
Yeah, yeah. So
because of that.
disappointing.
Yes, and then last year the absolute debacle of the strategy calls from Ferrari last year, takes and shows, where he goes from absolutely dominating the race to fourth place because again, like you said,
Yeah,
there's no passing at Monaco.
right, right. Exactly.
So he gets called into the pits, does his tire change, and comes out in fourth place because Ferrari completely cocked up the strategy.
Yeah, last year was not a good year for Ferrari, especially with
No,
strategies.
yes, absolutely. So let's with the strength that Ferrari has shown the last two races, albeit somewhat different type of circuit, but thoughts on, do you think does Leclerc have the potential to finally turn things around from the last 2 years and have a really strong showing this weekend?
I would like to say yes, right? I like him, as a fan. I think he's great. I think he has great potential. But the problem is, I see him, whether it be strategy or whether it be him being self-destructive, I see something, a commonality there. Something happens, right? And again, either it's something that he just does a boneheaded mistake, and he's off in the gravel, or he has a bad strategy given to him, So again, I would like to say yes, but I'm doubtful. How about that?
Okay, fair enough. All right. So, last thing we're going to hit on before we call it a day is has been some talk out of the paddock today. One of the other news stories is that there's a number of the teams think that this is one of the weekends that Red Bull is beatable because Monaco is such a tight circuit and
Yeah,
because it negates a lot of Red Bull's speed advantage. Uh, there's only one DRS zone at Monaco. The track is so tight that depending upon qualifying and depending upon the way the strategies play out, there's a number of the teams think that this is, definitely a weekend that Red Bull is beatable. So your
yeah,
thoughts?
completely agree. All depends on where they are in the lineup. After quali, all
Mm-hmm.
depends. If
Yep.
if they don't get, but fourth or below, probably not going to happen. So
Probably
again, this could
so.
be one of the races that you were talking about that they may not win it, right?
Yes. Absolutely, and I think that if anything, with the Ferrari strong showing the last couple of weeks, we're going to
Yeah,
see what especially we're going to know even more tomorrow after FP1 and 2. What kind of strides Mercedes has made with their new updates that are coming, which we'll know more about tomorrow, or maybe even later today. Now that the car is, the updates have broken cover. So you've got Mercedes, you've got Ferrari, and we can't rule out Aston Martin because this is
true.
another, Monaco is another one of those
Alonso,
tracks
yeah,
that Alonso absolutely loves.
yeah,
Alonso goes to can pedal the car really, really well around Monaco. So I think that you can't count out Alonso this weekend either. That if Alonso can
true.
get himself in, a really good qualifying position, first through third, maybe even as low as fourth. And he has, as we've seen before, Alonso can make some barnstorming
Yeah,
starts that if he's, in first or second going into the first corner at Monaco, I think he has a really good chance of being, as long as the strategy comes right, I think he's got a really good chance this weekend.
completely agree. Yeah, and it would really be nice to see him take a podium or take a win. Actually, right?
Yeah,
He's had several
absolutely.
podiums, right?
It'd be the first time that he's his
Yeah,
first win in almost 10 years, and
yeah,
it would be
right.
something very, very cool to see.
Yeah, definitely, especially at Monaco, definitely.
Yes, absolutely. The one of the crown jewels.
Yeah,
It's yeah. So, and then one more thing that I wanted to touch on before we say goodbye. That's not on the rundown, um, but I think that is important. Okay, now we may have to edit this out because now I had a thought, now I've lost it. There was one more thing that I was gonna bring up. Oh well. All right, so never mind. So we'll go ahead and
okay, all right.
all right. All right. So, like I said, we've got all right, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna I think we should go ahead and land this plane. Or more precisely, we're gonna box the car and
Yep.
call it good. So, Corey, any final thoughts for today? About the last couple of weeks, about the Grand Prix this weekend. Go.
Man, I'm just I feel like it's almost like the start of the season again, right? Because it's been so long, you know. I'm just super excited, and Monaco's just one of those races that I think are just fantastic. It's so tight, it's so fast. It's just one of those things that I love. I look forward to all year.
Yep, absolutely. I love Monaco. You're right. It's can't it has produced some very boring races in the past, but it's
Yeah,
also produced some very exciting and
right.
absolutely incredible wonderful races as well. I mean, you've had the years where Senna was just absolutely sublime around Monaco. You had 1995, which was an attrition race where you had 24 cars started because this was back before they limited it to
Hmm.
10 teams. So you had 24 cars that started the race and only six that finished, and you had the Leger team with Olivier Panis, who took his one and only win in Monaco, because of the attrition that year, and between the rain and the car malfunctions and breakdowns. So yes, it's definitely one of the crown jewels. It's the one race that every Formula One driver wants to win, regardless. And so it's always just an amazing atmosphere, an amazing time on the calendar, and it really is the start of the European part of the season where we go to
Yeah,
back to a lot of the old world you know tracks, like Spain, like, Silverstone, Spa, and just, Monza,
Yeah.
just a great time. Probably, the stretch coming up is, probably some of the best racing in, that Formula One will have in any given year. And
Yeah.
I'm super excited.
Same here. Can't wait.
So yeah, absolutely. So all right, well, I think what we're going to do is, it's like I said, it's time to take box and retire to the garage. We're going to come to you in early next week. So we're going to recap Monaco, where we'll talk more about the McLaren and Mercedes upgrades and all the news that's coming out of Monaco. And so until next time, for Corey Brune, I'm Scott Vick saying, stick to the medium tires and don't pitch it in the kitty litter.